Hi, I'm David Moulton. I'm a storyteller here in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, and I'm here to tell you a story that features one of the 15 species of cranes. It's called the brolga. And the story is called Why Brolgas Dance. As many of us know, cranes are fantastic dancers. I first read this story in a book called Tales from the Billabong, which has a whole lot of folk tales from Australia. And many folk tales have many versions. So I read this story in a book, but I'm going to tell you my version of Why Brolgas Dance. Now, there are a couple of things I need. I need some audience participation. Occasionally, when I say the name Brolga, I'll want you to cheer loudly. And I do have a little bit of an audience here, so they can help me out. So when I say brolga and I go like this, you cheer. And when I go, you stop. So it's everybody ready? Let's try it. Brolga.
Yay!
Very good. Now, there's another character in the story, Bruley, the evil magician. And when I say Bruley and I go like this, you can boo or hiss. So here we go. Try it. Bruley.
Yes.
Excellent. Very good audience. So we'll go into the story. A long time ago, in the outback in Australia, somewhere near the Darling River, there was a family or a village of Aborigine people. And in that time, only the men were allowed to dance. The women were expected to sit around the perimeter of the campfire ring and stomp their feet to make the rhythm, or maybe clap their hands or beat on logs as drums. But only the men were allowed to dance. But there was one young girl in the village, and her name was Brolga. So, Brolga.
Yay!
Brolga loved to dance, but she wasn't allowed to. But she loved to dance. And one night, they were all gathered around the campfire doing one of their most sacred dances. And the men were dancing away, dancing and prancing, and the women were stomping their feet and beating on the logs. And Brolga was just twitching. She wanted to dance. She couldn't stand it. And finally, she jumped up and went out and joined the men and started dancing. And all the people, oh, there's a girl dancing. But they realized she was such a fantastic dancer. She was so beautiful and so graceful in her dancing that they allowed her to continue. And pretty soon, she was dancing all the time. People from other villages had her come to their villages to dance for their ceremonies. And she grew quite famous. And many of the young men in the area wanted to marry her. But Brolga said, no, I don't want to marry. If I marry, I'll have to cook and clean and have children and take care of children. I just want to dance. Well, there was one person in the village, the evil magician, Bruley. And Bruley wanted to marry her and have her all for his own. But she said, no, I won't marry you. Well, the villagers were concerned that Bruley might do something terrible to Brolga. And they told her to always stay either close to the village or close to them when they were out gathering food and hunting. One day, though, Brolga went out and was dancing, and she forgot to stay close to her friends. And she danced way off into the desert and was just dancing along. And Bruley was watching and keeping his eye on her. And he used his magic to turn himself into a whirlwind. And he swirled and went out to Brolga and lifted her up and twirled her around in the whirlwind and yelled to her, "Marry me, Brolga, marry me." And she said, no, I will never marry you. Marry me, or I will make sure that you never marry anyone. No, I will never marry you. Well, Brolga found that she was being twisted in the whirlwind and slammed down onto the ground. And the whirlwind took off and scattered across the desert. And Olga picked herself up off the ground, and she looked down, and what happened to my feet? These are bird feet and bird legs. Oh no! And my arms. I have wings. I have wings and feathers. Oh no! I have a beak. She realized she had been turned into a crane. And she thought, oh no, how am I ever going to dance? How can I dance like this? But she tried it, and she discovered that with her new form and her wings, she could dance even better than she had before. So she practiced as she went back towards the village. And the villagers, realizing that she was gone and that Bruley was out somewhere, they were concerned and they were searching for her. And the search party saw this strange bird coming towards them, and they thought about chasing it away, but they realized that the bird was doing one of their most sacred dances and doing it really beautifully. And then they knew that Bruley had changed Olga into a bird. So they went to her and took her back to the village, and they cared for her, and they made sure that she was always safe. And from that day to this, that species of crane has been called Brolga, and they have always been fantastic dancers. And to this day, Brolgas still hang around the Aborigine camps, and the Aborigine people will take care of them and make sure that no harm comes to them, and they never chase them away. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Tom Page, and I'm a local steamboat storyteller. And I'm really happy to be here with you, and I'm going to share a story called The Paper Crane. It's written by Molly Bang, and it's one of my favorites. Once upon a time, there was a man who owned a restaurant. And the restaurant was on a very busy road, and it was always wonderful. He worked very hard. He worked from morning till late at night. He loved to cook. His guests were very happy, and he was happy. But one day, a highway was finished, and that highway meant that his road was no longer very busy. And there would be weeks where he would have no guests. But he worked with his son, his younger son, and they kept the restaurant ready for guests to come at any time. The floors were clean, the tables were set, the plates were all polished. They just waited. One evening, a stranger came into the restaurant. Now, he was an old man, and he had old, worn clothes, but he had a very kind and gentle manner. He came into the restaurant, and he told the owner that he had no money to pay for his meal. The owner had him sit down anyway at one of the best tables, and then he and his son went into the kitchen, and they cooked the best meal that they could possibly cook, and they served it, and they served the stranger like he was a king. And he was happy. His tummy was full. And he said at the end of the meal, he said, though I cannot pay you for this meal, I would like to thank you in my own way. So while still seated, the old man reached out and took a paper napkin. And his fingers, although old, were very skilled. And they took this paper napkin and they folded and folded and folded, and he produced a paper crane, a beautiful paper crane, and he presented it to the owner. And then the stranger told the owner, all you have to do is clap your hands once, and this paper crane will come to life, and it will be a beautiful, beautiful living bird, and it will dance for you. Without further words, the stranger left the restaurant. A little later that evening, the man the owner and his son put the paper crane on a table, stood back, and waited. And as they did that, the owner clapped his hands once. And the bird, the paper crane, became a living bird, a beautiful living bird on the table. It hopped down and it began to dance. And it began to dance like all cranes do. And it kept on dancing. Now soon, the word of this magic crane got out. And from near and far, people came to see this magic bird dancing. And the owner was so happy because his restaurant was full again. And the bird danced. And people came. He cooked from morning till evening. He and his son served the food. And the bird danced. And the guests were delighted. And for weeks, and then for months, this went on. And all was good. One evening, a stranger came into the restaurant. And he was an old man. And he had old and worn clothes. But he had a really kind and unusually gentle manner. The owner looked at him and at once knew who he was, and he was overjoyed. Now the stranger didn't say anything, but out of his pocket he took a flute. He took the flute, looked at it, and he put it to his lips, and he began to play. And he played beautifully. The crane, who had been resting up on a shelf, opened its eyes, got up, hopped down, and started dancing. And they had not seen this dancing before. It was so incredible. This bird was as happy as it had been. And it danced, and it danced, and he played and played. Until finally, he was finished. He was finished. He took the flute, put it back in his pocket, and then he slowly walked over, got onto the back of the crane, put his arms around it. They walked to the door, and they flew away. Now, to this day, the restaurant still sits by the side of the road, and it is busy. It is busy. The owner and his son are so happy. They're up early in the morning to cook and make their amazing food. And guests come and they enjoy the food, and they just like and enjoy hearing the stories of this gentle stranger and the dancing crane that came out of a paper napkin. I should tell you that the name of the restaurant is the Paper Crane. And that is the end. Okay.